If you want to know the entire history of Mojaloop or every nook and cranny of the Mojaloop code base, this is the guy to talk to. One of the things that we have formalized fairly recently is we formalized our release processes. So we now release Mojaloop on a fairly regular cadence. Sam is the person responsible for this. And Mojaloop is now at version 17.2.0. And to give you the lowdown of what that includes and what that means, here is Sam Kumari, the Mojaloop Foundation's Technical Director. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for the kind words, Simeon, and following Paula's suggestions already. Good morning, everyone. How many of you are thrilled for the technical day of the Mojaloop event? Thank you. So I know we might be in a minority, but I know we are all very strong to make up for the numbers. So good to have you guys here. Before we start, Simeon kind of mentioned the number, but I was going to ask what is the latest version of Mojaloop, if anyone can guess it. But yeah, we'll get into that. So today, I would like to give a brief overview of the Mojaloop releases, where we are, and look at the various quality and security measures we take to keep Mojaloop secure and provide for the financial grade requirements that communities, nation scale deployments need, and then look briefly at the future of what's coming. Excuse me. So as Simeon mentioned, the journey was, it seems long, but in terms of evolution of software of this kind, where they involve nation-scale deployments of payment systems, it's still very young, but you can see that the level 1 project was kicked off in June of 2016. And without touching everything, version 17 of Mojaloop was a huge milestone in Mojaloop's journey. So version 17 involved delivering a newer version of the Mojaloop API. So Mojaloop API so far was only version 1 or 1.1, which served us well for many years. But early this year, we had Mojaloop version 17, which finally had a standard foreign exchange and inter-scheme support, and also support for ISO 20022 messaging. There were performance enhancements as well. But building on that, version 17.10, which we announced in the last MojoCom event, the online event, version 17.10 was focused on consolidating the updates we had with version 17. So in this one, we did some maintenance changes like upgrading the node version, provenance of Mojaloop Helm charts to enhance our security, software bill of materials, and upgrades to our deployment methods and consolidating the features in general. So now, as of now, we have a release candidate version 17.20. It's for development or testing QA purposes, but the official release will come as we iterate through this phase of testing. So there is a slide I have where we look at the cycle. We look at that, and right now we're in the process of testing, going through the release checklist to make sure that we're able to release this without any issues to the community. On the first day, we saw many new attendees here who are attending for the first time. So I want to also spend not a lot of time, but a few seconds on what Mojaloop means, some of the terminology. For example, Mojaloop platform. So Mojaloop platform is not just the 3 steps of Mojaloop or the services that support Mojaloop lookup, agreement of terms or quoting, and then the transfer or clearing, but it also involves many different things, all the things that are needed to run the day-to-day operations of a Mojaloop platform. So this involves the Mojaloop core, which is at the heart of everything, the very central circle. And outside of that, we have services that support that. For example, the adapters, the SDK scheme adapter, various adapters that help with messaging and connection onboarding. On top of that, we have portals like finance portal, monitoring support for operations teams. And then finally, we have several security mechanisms like the API gateway and tooling similar to that. We also have tools for supporting infrastructure deployment, Terraform, Ansible, infrastructure as code, we call it ISC for short. And of course, the artifacts that are supported, containers, images that help with deployment of the containers, NPM packages, and Helm charts. All right, version 17.20, what does it include out of the box? So this all the other features that come with all the previous releases, for example, peer-to-peer transfer, request to pay, bulk, FX interscheme ISO 22 messaging are already included. But some of the new items with this release will be performance, quality, and security enhancements. So after version 17, we wanted to consolidate what was published with version 17, which was a major release, and this continues that effort of making sure that we are patching it, we are improving the quality, fixing any issues that are found reported by adopters. For PISP, I wanted to add a single note that we have a version 1 that is supported currently, but version 2 is underway, and version 1 has become a bit older as of now because it was developed about 4 or 5 years ago using an API version v1. We have a standard version v2 of the PISP API, or the third-party payment initiator version, but it's not production quality yet. Implementation has just started, and it will be delivered soon in the coming PIs. So when we call Mojaloop infrastructure as code bundle, it includes many different things. The Mojaloop core, when I call a Mojaloop release, it includes version 17.20, the core services. But on top of that, the IAC bundle includes the various components that are required to deploy a Mojaloop platform. So this includes gateway and load balancers, tools to provide for role-based access control, like ORI stack, Istio, and then tools to support security, such as the MTLS, JWS, and ILP mechanisms that we use, portals for operations teams and business operations, technical operations teams, portals for reporting services, and a control plane for managing deployments, and tools for onboarding support. So this slide will be available on our decks, and you can look at the previous events, but I want to highlight the newly supported use cases. Everything else is new, is old, but with this version 17, version 17.10, 20, there's been emphasis on foreign exchange and inter-scheme support. And even though it was initially introduced with version 17, there have been enhancements, bug fixes, and some quality improvements that are made to these features. You can see Mojaloop API initially supported a total of 11 use cases. With foreign exchange, now it has come to 12. Some of these are tested on a regular basis, but some of these need support from the DFSPs because they involve tools and devices that sit on the DFSP boundary. This goes into the detail of the resources, won't touch it, but you can see that FX codes and FX transfers are the other resources that are newly supported. On the administration side, we have resources that support participant management lifecycle, settlement models, and oracles that are needed for supporting user lookup. Settlement functionality is something that's been iterated over for quite some time. We actually have a settlement version 3 of the API, but it's not been implemented yet. It is in a way tied to what we see at Mojaloop evolution. When we have a Mojaloop core with Tiger Beetle, we'll have the new version of settlement as well. But currently, the version of settlement supported is version 2, which is well tested and is adopted by many of our current adopters as well. PISP, or third-party payment initiation, 3PPI, version 1.0 is supported out of the box. Version 2 is currently being implemented and in progress. It might be delivered within the coming PIs. We don't have a timeline, but maybe Paul Macon will touch on that later on. All right, so that is the big question we face. It also came up in one of the breakout sessions yesterday. Why upgrade, and what are the pros and cons? Obviously, I'm on the side of you should upgrade, but I thought I'll touch briefly on, not that you don't know it, everyone here in this room, I'm assuming knows this, but wanted to give some specifics on why upgrade Mojaloop releases, specifically to version 17, 17.10, and 17.20 when it's published officially. We've noticed that as part of our performance testing, Mojaloop version 17.20 release candidate is the one we are using for performance testing right now. And there are some changes to some of the components and adapters. For example, for those of you who know the SDK scheme adapter, which helps DFSPs or banks, mobile wallet providers connect to Mojaloop more easily and simply. There have been enhancements in that thanks to our partners in various projects. For example, the DRPP project, they delivered a fix where the performance of the SDK was improved 10 times over. And we were able to witness and test it through this journey because we were performance testing the system at the same time. So from 20, for example, for sake of discussion, it went from 20 to 200 with the same hardware footprint. So these kind of performance improvements, along with the new features, I don't need to repeat it, but the FX interscheme ISO 20022 support is only available with version 17. 17.10 and 17.20 are also very essential because Node.js version 18 support ended around May of this year, and version 17.10 includes version 22, which will be supported almost till the end of next year, 2026. And similarly with 17.20, we have many security patches. For example, there were new vulnerabilities identified in packages that we use, such as Axios and Redis, or some of the security libraries that we use. These are all addressed with the new releases. Evolution of software, I'm sure you're all familiar with the life cycle of that. And this is very much essential to stay in touch, or at least close to the latest Mojaloop release, so that you can take advantage of all these new features. And finally, future proofing. We are all working on, the Mojaloop evolution workstream is working on two new things, which is a new accounting model and upgrading the Mojaloop core with Tiger Beetle. James and Louis will talk about that later on. Excuse me, today, but we can see that the closer you are to the new release, it will be easier to transition into the next major release, because we also provide an upgrade path and guidance on how to upgrade with the latest release. So it will help in upgrading when you want to upgrade to the release that has the features you like or you need for your scheme. The release process overview, you can see there is this whole iterative cycle. So right now we are in this phase where version 17.20, where we are going through this iterative cycle of deploying the services, testing bug fixes, and making sure that there are no vulnerabilities that are medium, high, or critical vulnerabilities. We make sure that all these vulnerabilities are addressed and fixed before we make the public. And once that is done, we have a release checklist that includes about 25 to 30 items to ensure the various scenarios are covered. For example, we not only make sure that the primary collection, we call it golden path test, which includes about 2,500 to 3,000 tests that runs well, but there are also other collections that we run during the release process. All these run. There are security related guidelines. There are guidelines around version support. So for example, I'll take the example of Kubernetes version. I want to make sure that we are on either the latest or the latest version that is supported by tooling, like such as AWS and the other tools we use, to make sure that we don't go out of date on those. Once all those are done, then release is made to the community and notifications made, announcements. A brief, without looking at the full journey, prior to 17, these are the most recent releases, version 15 onwards to 17, and you can see various enhancements there. And this is the latest view or snapshot of Mojaloop releases. Version 17.10, consolidating version 17, you can see the changes there. Node.js upgrade, quality and security updates for software bill of materials, vulnerability management. And we also talked about security related updates. In version 17.10, we also had support for MySQL 2. Throughout the lifecycle, we are using the MySQL, but with this release, we used MySQL 2 because one of our adopters raised the requirement at our design authority that even the connections to the database needed to support TLS or secure communication, which is supported with MySQL 2, which also includes other enhancements. So that was done, and then we took the opportunity at 17.10 to also go through the list of all the charts that we publish, all the images we use, and remove any unused charts in Mojaloop. So some cleanup there. There were upgrades to merchant services, which tied to our session about LEI later on, and the usual maintenance and bug fixes. Some related to connects were done in 17.10. 17.10, performance improvements is a big update along with security patches and vulnerability management. There are also many updates to deployment that are coming on Helm and ISE that are supported with the latest release, which is 17.20. There are also many enhancements and bug fixes done. There are fixes in FX and interscheme to make sure there are improvements to discovery process, improvements to logging and error codes. These were all introduced, some of them from our partners at the DRPP or the COMESA project. Looking into the future, we still have a lot of things on the pipeline. The major release we are looking into is the Tiger Beetle integration. But based on when it is ready, we might do another minor release during this time as well. We're also looking forward to making enhancements to our settlements process and PISP version 2 and other things that come as well to streamline or rollout. So these are our ongoing activities at the moment. Where this week and next week, we are focusing on two things, which will be the performance testing to support our performance white paper workstream and release testing of version 1720 as well. There are also a lot of updates on security patching. We are mostly reactive in this, where whenever a vulnerability comes up, we patch it and publish the patch for that individual service, and then bundle all these together with our Mojaloop releases. There are enhancements coming to Mojaloop deployment to make it easier and more lightweight, if that is a term, and updates to documentation and testing that are coming as well. Some of the enhancements we are looking into is stabilizing the release cadence, work with our adopters on what cadence they prefer for our releases, supporting long-term support for Mojaloop. Right now, we only, it's not even like a formal contract or formal obligation, but support our latest releases. But we are working on support mechanisms for our releases and also looking into defining terms such as long-term support, what it means for Mojaloop. We're looking into closer integration with downstream tooling, such as finance portal, infrastructure as code and deploy methods and test cases as well, and working on documentation updates so that it's easy for our adopters to upgrade to follow the deployment instructions, things like that. What I wanted to show was that at the bottom of the release notes, so the release notes has about 8 sections that include the new features, a summary, version upgrades of individual services, any breaking changes, testing instructions, contributor list. And at the bottom, we have a license summary of all the packages that are included in the Mojaloop release and a software bill of materials as well. So the software bill of materials contains even to the lowest level of the packages. For example, in open source, especially with NPM, there is a package and it might have dependency on another package and another package. So the nested levels can go to anywhere between 1 to 14. Some packages have like 15 other nested dependencies. So the software bill of materials provided a summary of licenses of all the packages that are included to ensure compliance. It can be used for regulatory checks to provide for authorities to ensure that all the licenses are compliant, but also to ensure that these are all well maintained and there are no vulnerabilities even in the dependent libraries as well. So with that, I'll go to the platform quality and security update. So in Mojaloop, platform quality and security, I'll get to the CI pipeline in the next slide, but we have several different layers and tools that we use to ensure quality and security at the code level. So we use on the GitHub source level, we have tools, the CodeQL, Dependabot. These are the tools that are offered by GitHub for our plan. And there is a Snike tool that we use. We have GitHub Copilot that we use for scanning and PR reviews and checks as well. Then there is, of course, the bigger mechanism of peer review. So we have subject matter experts whom we call code owners for each repository, and they do reviews of all the contributions. So every contribution to a Mojaloop repository goes through a peer review process. We have security audits every PI, especially during the release cycle, to ensure that all the vulnerabilities are reviewed and any exceptions provided are cleared as well to ensure patched versions are used. The quality and security processes are reviewed during the release cycle. We have Sonar cloud scanning. We have coverage standards, end-to-end tests, functional tests, and validation during deployments as well. I want to give a brief snapshot of how the CI cycle, the continuous integration pipeline looks like. And wanted to highlight the gripe scan. I don't know if it's clear on the screen here, but there is a scan that we introduced recently. You can see there are about 14 steps in our CI process, each validating different aspects. Some of them are security and quality related. Some of them are just functional and build related. Gripe scan is the one we recently introduced on the source scanning level. So previously we used it on images where the image is built and then gripe scanning is done. But for repositories that did not include building an image, for example, like libraries, the scanning was not available. So in this PI, we added it, but previously it was there for images. We also have various different like license scanning, auditing, coverage standards, building, and deprecation related testing as well to ensure that any libraries that are deprecated are listed out for authors and owners to review and fix. So this is the cycle that we typically go through during the release checklist. So all the scans, the results they provide, we need to ensure that there are no medium, high critical vulnerabilities, and all the alerts are addressed. We have software bill of materials generated, not at the individually, not just at the individual repository level, but also at the bundle level of Mojaloop. At the Helm level, the aggregated software bill of materials is produced and it is published with the release notes for you to review. Recently, starting with Mojaloop version 1720, we introduced a feature for ensuring provenance of Mojaloop Helm charts. So to ensure any gaps with issues with publishing of Helm charts, during the publishing of Helm charts, the Mojaloop user signs the Helm charts, and during install or pre-install time, these can be validated to ensure that the source is authentic, and these are indeed signed by the Mojaloop CI user. And there are various repository related mechanisms that we have as well to ensure that the quality and security is maintained. This is the artifacts provenance. We also want to extend this to other artifacts such as packages and images. This will pursue in the coming PIs. For roadmap, we want to continue some of the work we are doing, which involves vulnerability management, but we are looking at enhancements on how much we can automate some of these, because this is a continual iterative process. Vulnerabilities keep coming up and we need to address this. So we're looking at how much of it we can automate using some of the latest tools, technologies available. We'll continue with analyzing and ensuring the issues that are produced of the various tools we have are fixed. We're looking at obtaining a FLOSS certification, OpenSSF. We started on that, but we weren't able to finalize that as we had to move to other priorities. But that is something we are working on. And we're always iterating our CI/CD tooling to ensure that we have latest versions. We ensure they are up to date to handle the latest packages and requirements as well. Another key item we are working on is documentation upgrades. So recently we published an article on how to manage vulnerabilities in Mojaloop, not just in the Mojaloop source or application code, but in the dependencies, and we'll keep enhancing that. One item we couldn't get to this PI, but we want to get to in the next PI is upgrading our finance portal. So far, we were focusing on the core of Mojaloop, but finance portal is something that we want to integrate more with the core as well, and ensure that we refactor the older components and bring them to the same quality standards as the Mojaloop core. On the thank you slide, I have some links to two of the work streams that are included in this work stream, in this presentation or session. So we have a Slack channel for core and releases and platform quality and security. Please, if you're interested, some of you have expressed interest in joining those. Please use these links to join, and there are some general links to Mojaloop docs and training program as well. There's also an appendix section regarding how we work, a more detailed history into Mojaloop versions. Initially, we just saw the single slide, but I have a 3-slide version of that, and some of Mojaloop's details such as deployment architecture, internal transfers architecture, and release automation that we use. Feel free to go through those, and if you have any questions, you can ask me later on. I have a few minutes, maybe I can open it for Q&A. Any questions?
Thanks, Sam. This is great to see. The whole PQS effort is great to see. Really digging into the code to make sure we understand what we're making and what we're releasing, and setting up not only standards but how-tos. Since there are 5 ways of doing anything, we've got to pick one and say this is how we do it. So I really appreciate your effort in that. One thing that might be helpful is if you added also, you said there's a new article on one of the aspects there. Is there a link to that in here?
It's in, I'll publish the link to that. So it's there in the docs.mojaloop.io official documentation. There is a new section for vulnerability management, and we published it there. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the nature of my question is how we get to a little bit of community housekeeping around the software base itself. Well, it's in very good shape now. And you and I have talked before, and we've reasonably well accomplished that as the software vulnerabilities are announced, they're critical, high, medium, and low. And we've given ourselves a target to clear the medium, highs, and criticals before we get to a release. That's a high bar because they pop up every week. There's new stuff that gets announced. That, where there's a bunch of them, other forms of code maintenance. The question I have for you in the community is there a possibility that during the release cycle, we can do a clean the beach activity? And clean the beach means that you go to the beach and you find there's a bunch of trash strewn around and you say, damn, that's a dirty beach. I guess we'll put up with it and then we'll go home. Or do you get a bunch of people to come out on the weekend and say, let's clean the beach? And no, it's not permanent. You might have to do it periodically. We see the results of that effort in Kigali, where they make these community service days and they come out and they clean things because things need cleaning. Could we do something like that here, where there's a set of activities that just require dozens of hands to get through it in reasonable time, but they're not hard and they can be organized. And once organized, you can set people off to do it, and then the next point release comes out, and that's behind us. It's an open-ended question. I'm sure there's not an immediate answer, but it would be great if we saw something like that take shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Miller. That's a great question, I think, because it takes many contributors and many people to do that. We kind of did that effort, like clean the beach with version 17, where we cleaned up everything, even the low vulnerabilities. That gave us actually a fresh start, because we know that any new vulnerability that comes up or alert comes up is coming from that timeline. It's not like 3 years old. So we cleaned the beach with version 17, and with version 17.10, wanted to publish it quickly because Node.js was going out of support. So we left the low vulnerabilities. We still followed our release checklist, but those are still pending, and we want to put more effort into it to clean up with version 17.20. So we are going through the release candidate phase. And one other thing I wanted to add to that was with contributors, we have many different adopters right now working simultaneously on the code base, and some of them have indeed helped us by addressing these vulnerabilities, because that is also important to their own internal testing. But some of them add these vulnerabilities to the ignore list and move on because they need to deliver the feature quickly. Those are the kinds of things we need to clean up with version 17.20, and your point is well taken, Miller. But having the community support in that, I think will accelerate our release life cycle and also help keep our code base clean from all these vulnerabilities. We're also looking into some agentic support on that. I don't have too much to share on it, but we started on seeing like how we can use some of the latest technology around that, and see if they can give us ready-made PRs which can address these right away.
Thank you, sir. I think the idea is very good because interoperability is the next core thing. Hope I'm audible. Now, my concern is from the loop, the app, how do we address the fear of a single failure point? And then could be another one is more of a business question. This being open source, how do we convince our bosses, yes, open source is safe? Could be some tips. No, thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think there are two questions there that can take an hour-long session. So one is about open source security. We're actually planning to do a workshop soon on that, maybe like a 3 to 4 hour workshop. I think Paula is considering that, and once that is approved, that will address that. But if I can say this, open source is likely more secure than most proprietary software, because all the vulnerabilities out there in the public, and I always say this, there is nowhere to hide for something open source. And open source means only the initial template or the code base is open, not the actual deployment. The deployment is secured with all the security mechanisms we talked about internally. So that, And the second one is Mojaloop has a microservice architecture. It's also API-led, but microservice architecture. And redundancy is enabled. And for any production system, our guidelines and recommendation is that they have at least 3 instances of every service. So there is redundancy at every level. Even the tooling that we choose is, we ensure that it supports distributed architecture or deployment of multiple instances. For example, the database MySQL PerconaDB supports like 3 to 5 instances that are always live. So these are some of the mechanisms we take to address those concerns. But Miller, if you want to add, or anyone, if you want to add anything to that, please do. Thank you. Thanks again. Yeah, we can follow up on that.